Hey, how's it going there, folks? Welcome back here to a Wednesday, May 29th, 2024, 11:11 a.m. Some beautiful numbers right there. A lot going on right now. Latest earthquake activity here on the globe shows a 3.7 into the area of the Indonesia Islands area. Now, take a look at this. About 11 a.m. local time there in Iceland, we did see a new eruption begin here. It was looking like it was going to happen fairly soon. We chatted about this last night. Now it looks like the eruption is in the same location as the previous long-duration eruption, just to the northeast of the Grindavik area, which is down here on this map. There's Hagafell right about here. Same area, although this is a very lengthy fissure opening. The latest information statement here shows where that fissure activity is at. Let's go ahead and pull this map up a little bit, and I'll show you guys. Again, Grindavik down here, Hagafell, the new fissure eruption right here, and of course some steady lava flow as well. Looking at some further lava flow to the east, it looks like. It is avoiding the barriers for now, but this is definitely a heavy-duty intense eruption with a lot of volume that has accumulated underneath this region, so this could go on for a little while. It did encounter some water around the area, which introduced a little bit of explosive activity to this eruption this morning. But goodness, let's see here. The fissure is approximately 3.4 kilometers long, so fairly lengthy. Look at this picture right here. I think this is at the maximum this morning, and beautiful, absolutely beautiful, stunning image. There's some of that new lava flow. Looks like it is tracking on some previously laid lava from previous eruptions, obviously. And leading up to this, of course, there was an intense earthquake swarm that kicked up in this area, and of course that's what I said to look for prior to any fissure activity opening up. Looks like some of those jets are scooting way up there, about 60 to 70 meters in the air. Lava has reached the defense walls west of Grindavik, they're claiming right here. So, west of Grindavik. Interesting. So, let me check the earthquake activity there real quick. That kicked up there across the Grindavik area. I want to show you guys how intense it was. There we go. Look at that. That's what I'm talking about. See, 525 earthquakes in probably a short amount of time. And right there where the fissure activity was opening up at. Now, had this been a little bit further south, there was obviously a little bit of concern that we may see some activity down south here, but it looks like that confined itself to the north, thankfully. Without any effect to the Grindavik area right now, and in the same previous area as our last eruption across the craters area. But that's a lot of earthquake activity, goodness. I wasn't up for this. I was still sleeping, but obviously had this come in and I seen this, we would know almost immediately that the eruption was about ready to begin in that area. The view, obviously, live from Iceland, is the site to check out if you want a sweet visual perspective here of what's going on. This is the power plant, Blue Lagoon off here. Magma, lava, nowhere close, or at least lava is nowhere close to this area for now. It's mostly confined in that same region there where the crater areas have been active. So right now it looks like this one's about the best visual. It has toned down. Obviously there was quite a bit of pressure, magma accumulation underneath this area, and it's always the first couple hours that are very intense in terms of super high fountaining, potential, further openings of fissure activity at the surface. But I think this will be it. It should slowly start to taper off here in terms of the volume of lava coming out of this newly opened fissure. Either way, a beautiful sight, And we'll continue to keep an eye on it. There's the risk assessment there with the new fissure right here in the line. Again, just east of Hagefell. Looks like it's just east of Hagefell is the southern end. We'll continue to keep an eye on it, see if anything changes. And let's see. Area 4, Grindavik, is unchanged from the previous risk assessment, but there is an increased probability of an eruption within the area and a lava flow. So it looks like potentially they have the Grindavik area in the potential zone of seeing some new lava flows, and of course maybe even an eruption there in that area. So, but we'll continue to keep an eye on it. Seismic activity has decreased rapidly. 1,500 to 2,000 on the rate flow of lava. Looks like that was fairly consistent throughout the morning. So the crack has extended further south and is about 300 to 400 meters north of the March-April crater. Is that right? Sometimes it's hard to get the translation here between Icelandic and English correct. Let's see here, this map. There's the Svartsengi area. Blue Lagoon power plant. Here's the new eruption just to the east of Hagefell. Grindavik down here. There's the protective barrier. Let me make this a little bit smaller here because it's just too big. And it does look like that lava flow is heading down south away from Grindavik, thankfully, due to the protective barrier. It's going to be this area right here, but also we got some heading off in this general direction, which could eventually make its way out here to the ocean. But yeah, 3.4 kilometers in length. It's a pretty significant fissure opening. And of course, we'll continue to watch that and report back on anything that takes place up there. That's pretty crazy. There was EMSC was reporting a little bit of activity in the 4 range. I think the largest one was a 4.3 in that cluster of earthquake activity there at Iceland. Goodness, we knew it was getting close, right? We definitely knew things were getting very close in terms of the eruption. All right, all this taking place too during a long duration X flare that kicked off right about here. Watch this huge X flare. Boom. Super long duration. And let me show you guys here on the chart what it looks like. Pretty powerful X flare, but a long duration event. We noticed that last night. Remember, we were chatting about this, how we were just consistently like in a state of long sea flare activity at the time. But I did mention that we'd see probably a decent X flare here before the morning. Well, it kicked up here about the morning, just a couple hours or so ago from that sunspot 3664. Look at that, super long duration. Uncertain though on if this thing produced any type of massive CME. Sometimes you can just get these large flares that really don't eject any material. Let me slow this down just a little bit, and we're going to take a look here, right about here. Watch this area over here, flaring like crazy, and then it just sparks up a pretty decent size X flare right there. Hard to tell though. We'll have to wait for a couple more images to see if we got any CME activity, far as the ejected material there. In this position, most likely it will not be geo-effective. It's still off there on the southeastern quadrant of the sun, southeastern limb of the sun, I should say. But we'll check back on some of the stuff. Either way, this sunspot here was the culprit of all the recent aurora activity weeks ago. Seen auroras down in Southern California, all over the southern states. A once-in-a-lifetime event. Well, that sunspot is back around from the far side and still looks to be very active. This is the second X flare that it's produced since it's come back around here in this area. So we're going to watch this pretty closely as it ventures a little bit more center disk here in the Earth-directed view. So, of course, anything that will blast off from there will be almost certainly geo-effective. Also, another sunspot up here we have to watch, but goodness, this one is just a showstopper. It wants to keep center stage. It's saying, look at me, look at me. So we're going to watch it and see what happens here in the coming days as Sunspot, former Sunspot 3664, which is now 3697, provides us with some further long-duration X-flare activity here just a short while ago. There's the magnetic complexity. Does still look fairly decent for holding on for so long here. There's still quite a bit of intermixing here of the central core of the magnetic structures here. And this area up here, I don't know, looks like it's starting to degrade a little bit. Was looking a little bit more promising last night, but still, we'll keep an eye on it. But I think the main one right now is going to be this sunspot down here, former Sunspot 3664. Long duration X-flare. X-flare event potential is obviously elevated now that this sunspot is well within view. 30% chance for an X-flare, M-flare at 60, C-flare around 99% chance or so. And we got to watch it because things are going to get pretty crazy here, I have a feeling. Let's see here. Ooh, Kevin covered a little bit here. It was an X 1.4 long duration event with an estimated velocity of 878 kms, pretty decent. A coronal mass ejection is now just becoming visible in updated imagery and should be mostly directed towards the east. So there was a CME apparently with this, but as mentioned, it's not going to be in the Earth-directed view. But we'll have to watch that. Might just get barely a little glimpsing blow of that CME. Here's a comparison, pretty decent. 3664 when it was just scooting off on the southwestern limb of the sun back on May 13th. Look at that. I'm glad he put this together. Pretty cool. I love this site, by the way, solarham.com. Check it out for all your space weather interest. Back here in the 13th time frame is when 3664 produced the largest X-flare of this solar cycle. Let me bring that back up without losing that image. That was the 8.7 flare, X 8.7 from 3664. And that was a flare itself. Notice that was a departing farewell from 3664, the largest X flare of the solar cycle. Pretty decent. Now it's coming back around the southeastern limb, and it's got to travel across the Earth-facing side of the sun. Just a day prior to this, when it was first visible here, it produced a welcome X flare. And then a second X flare this morning, long duration X flare activity. So I really think that we need to watch the sunspot pretty closely. It does harbor some great potential there in terms of stronger flaring, and who knows what it might bring for some aurora activity. Should we get some decent CMEs in the Earth direction? All right, so yeah, that's that. We got the big time volcano eruption there in Iceland, stirring things up. Space weather activity really ramping up. Let's see, Hawaii is an area we got to watch as well because this is super inflated in terms of inflation across the Kilauea volcano. Doesn't look like there's major earthquake activity out here today in terms of anything elevated, but I do want to double check the inflation charts, see what we got going on. Still going back up. This is the last 2 days. Here's the last week of inflation data. Notice we had a little period of deflation and then stationary and then back up here. But we're not quite as high as the previous level event, so we'll have to watch that. Either way, we're at a level here across the volcano there on the Big Island that hasn't been seen since 2018. A 2018 eruption that happened out there with a huge magma displacement on the East Rift Zone. So we'll continue to watch that for some development. Right now, it's just kind of stationary. Earthquake activity, Southern California, small amount of earthquake movement here. Here in the lower Borrego Valley area, just west of the Salton Sea. Very small earthquakes, nothing big. Doesn't look like any major elevated activity today. Look at the 2.5 map and above. Shows, it basically disappears all the earthquakes out here except for this one from yesterday, a little 3.1. So all microquake activity out here today. That includes areas of Intermountain West, Pacific Northwest as well. Yellowstone up here. Looks like they had a little 0.8. Let me double check that and see. Make sure we're not looking at any swarming going on. I still don't know what this was here from last night. This little image, a little reading on the graph. Now, what's weird though is that it comes in at different time frames. Like the west boundary, it's a little bit later. Notice that same thickness, same line, but a little bit later on the timestamp. Maple Creek here as well, a little bit earlier. And whatever it is, I don't know. I don't know if it was who knows what it could be. I'll have to inquire about it and find out what that reading was, but it's definitely showed up there across a few seismograph stations at various times. So that in itself could eliminate the potential of network interference, because then it should show up at the same time. Whatever it is, it moved or it was picked up differently on various seismograph stations. It's a little odd, but I'll check back on it. I don't think it was wind. Wind is going to look something like what we're seeing right now. These are wind events, but this here kind of starting off as a lower rate and then thicker and then eventually leading out to thinness right there as well. It looks a little weird. To me, it almost looks like some type of magma movement that would be picked up on a seismograph station, but I want to verify that before I say that, but it looks like it. The wind, let me show you guys the wind real quick up there just to verify that. The windy map, as you can see, we'll pull up, speaking of the wind, we got a lot of wind out here in Northern California. So this is the wind up here in Yellowstone National Park. You got gusts up there, 35, maybe potentially higher at some of these exposed areas. So that is what we're seeing right now being picked up on a few seismograph stations out here. That's always easy to spot because it does show up quite nicely across many of the seismograph stations at the same time. But this here last night, I just don't know. It's a little odd. Unless there was a helicopter. I don't think it was a helicopter flying over, because that is literally about, trying to think here how long that was, maybe half an hour or so, maybe a little bit longer than that as far as the reading that was picked up. So I'll check back on that. I'll see if someone could help me with that, maybe someone at the professional level. And then I'll get back to you guys. All right, earthquake activity there in Texas. A movement going on across the oil fields of Texas from yesterday and today. Handful of earthquakes out there today, it looks like 3.4. One of the larger ones out here. Southern New Mexico. I believe this area has quite a bit of oil fields out here as well. Let me check here. Oh, yeah. Look at that. You have to zoom in and see it. It's not just confined to Texas. It's pretty much anywhere where there's oil field activity right now. So that tells me, look at them all out there. There's all these little checkered boxes and wastewater disposal ponds pretty much everywhere in this area into New Mexico. So literally a lot of pressure out here against this area of the North American plate. This is a ways away from the plate boundary, obviously, but there's still quite a bit of pressure that's always being produced underneath strain out here in the North American plate. These inner plate quakes can definitely give us a good sign of what's going on. And I still think we need to watch areas around the New Madrid seismic zone. A lot of times we'll see earthquake activity stir up out here, and then we'll see intense movement, or at least some interesting activity across New Madrid seismic zone, maybe even up around the eastern portion of the country, which for now looks quiet. But we'll continue to watch these two areas out here with this elevated movement in the oil fields. Puerto Rico, handful of quakes there as well, a couple of fours, well, at least 1 4 out there, it looks like, in the Dominican Republic area. Mostly 2s and 3s out there across the rest of the area. No big earthquake activity overnight. Did see some renewed deep movement here into the Izu Trench once again. It's going to be this earthquake right here. Super deep, 5.4, 380 kilometers deep for that quake. So things are they're definitely in movement out here. Got to watch certain regions here where we've been seeing a lot of deep activity. Tonga down here for one. Izu Trench up here looks like it wants to really stir things up. And, of course, what goes on here across this area of the plate boundary ultimately affects the area here across Taiwan, the East China Sea, the Philippines. That's where all the stress and the momentum tends to build up at, in the crunch zone there. We've been watching that earthquake swarm there in Taiwan over the past couple months, which has since died down, but still I think we got potential of seeing some larger scale movement there because of that interesting activity here earlier this month and last month. All the arrows indicating the direction of the general plate movement where all the strain accumulates. Notice that this area here around Taiwan, Philippines, this area specifically backed up by the Eurasia plate moving in this direction. You got the Filipino plate moving off in that direction as well. That's being pushed and shoved by the huge Pacific plate. Pretty much the crunch zone out here. So got to watch those deeper quakes. They do lead to much larger quake activity at the surface regions. 5.0 coming in down into the Mariana Trench, it looks like here, or just south of there. Mariana Trench area, although this is not a super deep earthquake. It's actually a shallow earthquake coming in right now. 3.2 also around the Philippines. So we'll keep an eye on this area. Things are definitely in motion right now across the western areas of the Pacific plate. Not a whole lot down south here across New Zealand or the Tonga Trench. Of course, this has been quite active here recently in the last couple days. So as expected, a lot of that migration of pressure has found its way out here, and that's what we're seeing right now from all this movement down south here recently. A lot of earthquake activity stirring up out here. Keep an eye on it. South America, Middle America Trench, typical movement. Of course, the Iceland activity, pretty crazy up there. So, again, the Live from Iceland is a site to check out if you want to see the visual eruption ongoing out there. Beautiful imagery. This should go down here soon, but no telling how long the eruption will remain. Last time we seen it, we thought it would only last for a few days, but it lasted, for a month and a half, 2 months almost, with just one active crater while the rest of the area inflated. But we'll see how this one reacts, and we'll keep an eye on things should anything else develop around the area. But for now, it looks like it's confined there around the Hagafell area of Iceland and just to the north of that area, with Grindavik remaining safe from this eruption for now. All right, folks, I'm going to jump off here and enjoy the day. It looks like we got a little bit more flaring coming up here. This one's starting to flare up here now, it looks like. But that is just interesting. It almost looks like it wants to produce another X flare. The way this has been kind of a long duration, like a consistent flaring type event is going on. I noticed it last night, and of course we've seen it today. It looks like it wants to produce another X flare out here. So we'll watch that. Obviously, this one here is flaring slightly. This does have X flare potential as well. So we have at least 2 massive sunspot areas that we got to watch here for some Earth-directed CME activity, which could ultimately, never know, create a secondary chance for those that miss the auroras. a couple weeks back now. Wouldn't that be something to see a once-in-a-lifetime event kick up twice in a month? That would be crazy. So you never know. We'll watch it and, of course, report back on things here, folks. Flaring going on, and if anything pops off in the large-scale department, we'll jump back on here and let you guys know, do an update on it. But for now, we'll catch you guys back out here a little bit later on, folks. Enjoy the Wednesday. Stay safe out there.